Hello and welcome to FinTech Futures Hot Seat. I'm Sharon, editor at FinTech Futures. I'm joined here with Sanat Rao, who is the Chief Business Officer and the Global Head at Infosys Finacle. Welcome, Sanat.
Thank you, Sharon.
Right, so today we're going to dive into some of these questions, but also maybe have a rapid fire at the end. All right, so when we look at major initiatives moving financial services forward, such as open banking, APIs, etc., how do you believe the industry and banks as a whole are adapting?
Well, on a global scale, obviously there's a lot happening in financial services. And it's not a surprise that both technology and regulation are absolutely at the heart of what's happening. But when we look at Europe, for example, I think it's been a bit of a mixed bag in the last couple of years. We've got some good news coming out of the Nordics region. Nordea, for example, announced its API platform. More recently, Klarna Bank from Sweden launched their own open banking platform. And I think they've introduced their single API, which connects them to over 4,300 institutions. So that's great, and hopefully there'll be more banks that will follow that through. But there have been a whole host of other challenges which have, in some ways, made the change a lot less rapid than it might otherwise have been. Certainly in Europe, no discussion can be complete without GDPR and PSD2. And while on the one hand, GDPR, since its introduction in middle of 2018, while that's very clearly put the focus on the right of individuals like you and me of control of our data, PSD2, on the other hand, is encouraging individuals to share their data with third parties. So a contradiction in some ways, but clearly fostering more competition and allowing a different way of working, which I think customers like you and me would like. If you take the area of payments, for example, certainly this is a very big area of disruption. And the policymakers at the European Central Bank have been, I think, facilitating that. They are clearly looking at initiatives like the PSD2 and more recently launched the Target Instant Payment Settlement, or commonly known as TIPS, to be two initiatives to enable Europe to remain a very competitive bloc within the economic regions of the world. TIPS certainly, it was expected to be a pan-European single platform for bank-to-bank settlements. It doesn't seem to have clearly picked up in the manner that was expected. So I think there's some way to go on that. We've seen the introduction of fintechs and big techs into financial services, and I think their impact is certainly here to stay. One of the more recently watched initiatives was Facebook launching their Messenger person-to-person payment. They launched it in UK and France, and clearly that's not had the impact that it was expected to have. I think, to summarize, there's a lot that's happening. And certainly customers want more change, but at the same time, there's a reluctance to be able to share the data with third-party providers. So I think there is a lot of innovation happening with technology on the one hand, driving a lot of this innovation. But at the same time, for individuals like you and me, we want this change. We want to be offered more and more value-added services and products, but we are reluctant to openly share our data with third parties. And that seems to be the conundrum that we are operating in. So I think it's exciting times, but clearly there's a lot more that needs to be done.
Okay, so what can we expect in financial services in 2020 then?
I think it's going to be more of the same. I don't believe in 2020 there's going to be anything radically different. Banks have started a whole host of initiatives, and they need to be taken to logical conclusion. And I think there's still a lot that needs to be done before some of these initiatives can really reap the benefits that banks were expecting. So let's take RPA and automation, for example. Clearly, every bank is experimenting that in some way or the other. A lot of banks today are deploying bots, but most of them are being deployed for the more mundane tasks at the back end. I think that will continue. However, the challenge for banks and the area that they will really focus on is to try and see how they can bring this automation for benefit to the end customer. So I think there's going to be a focus on automation on the one hand and RPA for certain, but increasingly looking at the customer experiences and customer journeys and making a difference to the end customer like you and I. So that's one area where I think there is going to be change. Um, with the proliferation of fintechs and big techs coming into financial services, one of the things I think banks are aspiring to when they look at the way fintechs and big techs operate is to try and replicate the kind of agility that these organizations have. And indeed, there are some banks that have taken some very good steps forward. So here in Europe, ING is very well known for deploying agile at scale. And I think that's aspirational for many banks, and we'll see more and more banks putting focus on agile because of the realization that in that different way of working, banks need to be able to show results quicker. They need to be able to show that they're doing multiple tasks concurrently. And I think agile certainly will be one area where there'll be a lot of focus in 2020.
That's interesting that you mentioned right in the beginning robot processing and also like artificial intelligence, especially in the back office. So when we think about how the workplace will change, I think probably from your perspective and what you said before, that staff in that area might end up having this radical change because all of a sudden their jobs are being done by robots. So what industry initiatives do you think currently exist and probably could exist in order to help with learning new skills? And what skills do you think that these people need to sort of still be relevant?
To my mind, the biggest change is going to be around the acceptance of individuals, no matter which part of the organization they are in, no matter what is their level in the organization. I think the biggest realization is going to be that everyone needs to reinvent themselves. You may come armed with a lot of experience, you may come armed with a lot of degrees under your belt, but times are changing so rapidly that every individual will need to reinvent and ensure that he or she remains relevant to the employer and indeed to the customer that they're serving. So I think that's going to be one very, very big area. And towards that, whether it's tools that are made available for collaboration, tools that are being made available for on-the-go learning, more and more organizations are allowing employees to take time off to focus on self-development. These are changes from the past, and I think today it's being done in a more disciplined manner. It's being done with a realization that this is good for the individual, but also good for the organization. So I think that's one area where there's going to be a change.
So my last question, what does digital mean for you in financial services today?
Well, it means different things to different people, obviously. You go back 5-10 years ago, it really meant the introduction of yet another electronic channel, right? But I think there's realization today that it means a lot more than that. First and foremost, I think banks that are truly digital are recognizing that it's back to front. So it's not just the front office, it's not just the electronic channels, it's back to front. Which means that the legacy systems at the back end, the multitude of back-end systems need to be able to open up their APIs to electronic channels, to third-party applications. So that's one thing for sure. The second is that with the amount of data that's available today, there's a lot of focus on actionable insights coming out of a lot of analysis of the data. So I think this ability to use the insights in real time so as to enrich the customer experience is very integral to digital transformation. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach. But I think it's fair to say that it's not just an electronic channel, it's enterprise-wide and certainly touches technologies, touches different functions, touches people. And the day it starts touching the end customer, that's where the transformation will be truly digital.
Well, thank you so much for that, Sanat. And of course, if you want to hear more, you can go on our website, www.fintechfutures.com, so you can see some more news and updates on Infosys Finacle. And of course, if you want to hear more from Sanat and also more about Infosys and what they can do for you, do log on to their website as well. Thank you so much, and thank you, Sanat.
Thank you, Sharon.